Are you pregnant, YN? As the question left her mother's lips, YN felt the air knocked out of her lungs. Her face became pale as she looked at her mother with a terrified expression. Mother, what are you saying? Her mother's eyes traveled throughout her body before meeting her eyes once again. Mrs. Choi straightened her posture. The nerve in her forehead started to rise from the anger she feeling towards her daughter. You aren't eating anything in the morning, 2 months of not getting periods, and your face is glowing. Mrs. Choi shook her head left to right in disbelief. While the reality settled in her mind, she scoffed before raising a finger to her chest. You are really pregnant? Her hands came to her head, holding it from the sudden headache she is feeling. After what felt like an hour, she muttered, out. YN sucked in a breath from the shock as she felt the tears prickling at her eyes, ready to come out any second. She always thought her mother loved her, despite the constant scolding, even if she didn't show it to her, even if she didn't praise her for being top in the class, even though she didn't smile at her every day, when she didn't try to tell the people off who spoke ill of me, even if she didn't protect her from her father. She's been a fool all along to believe her mother loved her. But the dream she had came crashing down to her chest from the one word left her mother's lips. But YN wanted her answers from her mother for many questions that were hanging in her heart. She looked at her mother, who is now looking up at her, but she widened her eyes when she saw the tears rolling down her mother's cheeks. Mother! YN reached her hand out to hold her mother, who now started to weep in her chest. Mother, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. YN lifted her palms to wipe her own tears as she hugged her mother tightly for the very first time in her whole life. No, leave from here. Mrs. Choi caught YN by her shoulder, looking at her in the eyes after wiping her tears. If he came to know about you, he will really kill you, YN. Please get out of here. I don't want you to get hurt again. Please get away from here. Go. Her mother started pushing her towards the door but stopped when a thought came to her mind. She looked at YN, who was now crying again. Who's the father? Where will you stay? Oh God! Mrs. Choi started crying again, cursing the effort before grabbing YN in her hold again. She lifted her face when the footstep echoed through the room where she thought only two of them were in. Her face showed pure shock when a young handsome boy came towards them while wrapping his palms in his pants. Who? The mother and daughter came out of each other's arms before YN's mother looked at the unknown boy and towards her daughter, who was now looking at the floor, but she looked at Jungkook again when he started. Hello ma'am, I'm Jian Jungkook and YN's boyfriend. I'm sorry for the trouble I did, please forgive me. Jungkook bowed in full 90-degree after he spoke, but stood straight after Mrs. Choi patted his back. Are you the father? Jungkook looked at YN for a second before nodding his head. He looked down again, not having enough courage to look at her mother. Will you take good care of her? She questioned him, which Jungkook immediately nodded his head at. I will, ma'am, I really love her. Jungkook's eye reached YN once again, holding his contact for a few seconds before looking at her mother again. Then take her away from here. It's not like I'm happy about my daughter being pregnant, but if it can make her leave this hell, then I'm glad. Mrs. Choi took both of his hands. She leaned down, pressing his palms on her forehead, and she begged him. Take her away, make her happy, please. Mrs. Choi let out her tears and looked up at her daughter. Wait, she went outside before coming back. After a few minutes, she handed him a card. There is about $1,000. I saved it for a while, and I know it's not enough, but please take this and call me if you need more. I will try to get from him. She showed the card in his hand, but Jungkook shook his head while handing the card to her again. It's okay, ma'am, there is no need for this. I'll take care of her, that's my promise. But Mrs. Choi showed the card in his hand. Please take this, it's the only good thing I'm doing as her mother. Don't refuse my help. Jungkook looked at YN, who was now looking at him while biting her lower lip. She exhaled lightly and nodded her head. Jungkook let out a sigh before nodding his head at her mother, took the card. Mom? Mrs. Choi let out a soft cry before looking at her daughter. Come with me, we will leave from here together, she said while taking her mother's hand from her own, but Mrs. Choi shook her head while cupping YN's cheek. She looked at her daughter with the new tears rolling down hers. I can't. Someone needs to be here to keep him from doing something, so don't worry about me. Worry about yourself and my grandchild, yeah? She hugged her daughter one more time before they left immediately. I stepped on the accelerator while racing through the city lights in the black Mercedes-Benz with a sleeping figure by my side. My eyes traveled from the road to a figure who was now sleeping peacefully despite the position she was in after a dinner with my parents. My heart suddenly raced at the events here in my home. How she smiled at my parents while they talked about the baby. How she gripped my hands whenever she felt nervous. Basically, everything made my heart beat faster than usual. I furrowed my eyebrow when she started to squirm in her seat while holding her tummy, and without any resistance, my mind started to get worried. I placed my palm on her head, caressing her down. I let out a sigh when her eyes started to calm down. But I took my hand hurriedly when she woke up with a gasp. She turned around to look at me while biting her lips. I raised my eyebrow at her, telling her to continue. I need to go to the bathroom. She told me hurriedly, letting me know how much she wanted to go. Hold it for a second, I will drop the car somewhere. I searched for a restaurant or a motel and let out a sigh when a cafe came to my view. My foot hurriedly placed on the brake before I turned around to look at her. Go to the cafe, I will come shortly after the parking. She clumsily started opening the door and disappeared inside the cafe. My eyes wandered to the side looking for a spot before spotting one. I parked the car before coming on only to bump into someone. Shit, I'm so sorry. I stopped after looking at the person standing in front of me. A certain anger started to flow in my body, and before I knew it, my fist already landed on the person's face. I caught him by his hair and pushed him towards the window of my car. You knew it? A chuckle left his bloody lips before he looked at me from his position. Aren't I the one who should be mad? I gripped his hair harshly, making him let out a cry. What the hell are you saying? I kneeled his stomach to make him hold his stomach from the pain. He stood up with trouble holding his stomach while wiping his lips. They lied to me saying she is pure. Then ain't I the one who should be mad? And seeing you right now makes me believe that you are the one who popped the cherry. Am I right? He laughed at my face before crouching down again when my fist landed on his stomach again. I opened the car door before making his head inside. I was about to close the door on his neck, but a hand wrapped around my waist, stopping me from my actions. I looked down at the hand before turning over at my shoulder to look at YN. Leave him, he is not worth it, and everyone's watching. Let's get away from here, please. I gulped before looking around. I exhaled loudly before throwing him out. I made her sit inside the car before closing the door. She looked at me through the window. I just nodded my head before turning at him once again. Will it be weird if I said I am feeling happy while looking at his state? He lied there on the concrete, hands clutching his stomach while blood dripping from his mouth. Making my way towards him, I crouched down before taking his face in my hand tightly, making him to look at me. If you ever try to breathe the same air as her, I will send you to hell straight away, remember. I let his face roughly before making my way towards the car getting in. I looked at her for a second before turning the engine on. We left from there. The whole ride she didn't utter a single word, making me worried. I caught her hand as soon as we entered the living room. She looked at me for a while before wrapping her hands around my waist while placing her head on my chest. She hugged me tightly. Everything will be okay from now on. I whispered out the words, smiling after she tightened her hold. We stayed there for how long we didn't know of. Jungkook ran inside the living room while letting out heavy breaths to look at his girlfriend, crying her heart out. His heart started thumping hardly in his chest. Before gulping, he made his way inside with his hand holding a cover he brought from a store just a moment ago. He looked at the TV and the heaviness immediately left his chest when he saw the drama she currently invested in. His lips formed a straight line as he made his way in front of her, who was sitting on the couch. He knelt before her, showing her the cover he brought. YN looked at him for a second and the cover while wiping her running nose by the tissue he handed. He saw her eyes comically widen before she snatched the cover from him and started looking inside the cover excitingly and finally taking out the flavored ice cream, digging in. Jungkook chuckled at the behavior before sitting himself beside her, wrapping his hand around her shoulder, pulling her closer to him. Jungkook entered the living room after a stressful day at school to see YN watching the same Disney movie where the female lead had hair as long as a watchtower. For how many times in this week he didn't count as. Since it's a second trimester, YN is on leave from high school and will continue her studies after a year from the birth, and the baby will be at my parents' house till we come back from the work. I let out a sigh before setting myself beside her. My eyes traveled towards her, which were shining brightly by the lights from TV. Her hands rubbing her tummy, where now a little bump is showing. Only 3 months from on, and then I will have you in my arms. My lips twitched at the thought. I placed my palm on her tummy, which made her pause her actions. Before looking down and to me, she smiled at me before leaning to my shoulder, then continued watching the movie. Placed a pick on her side while rubbing her bump. I let out a sigh again. How many times will you watch it, YN? My lips stretched out into a pout. I leaned down to her lap. Placing my head on her lap, I laid on the couch before turning my head sideways to face her baby bump. I wrapped my hands around her waist and let out a sigh when her hands started to comb through my hair. Isn't she like me? Jungkook looked at her questioningly before she smiled at him and tried to give a pick on his forehead but couldn't because of her bump. Jungkook chuckled at her before lifting his head, giving her a peck on her lips. He lied on her laps once again. She strapped in the tower for her entire life before her Prince Charming came to save her from the hell like you saved me. Then am I a Flynn? Jungkook asked her teasingly, but furrowed his eyes when she shook her head. No, yours my Jungkook. He felt his cheek reddening. He couldn't help but to capture her lips again while his hand started to thumping her baby bump. But they halted on the reaction when they felt a movement on her tummy. The baby just moved. YN looked at Jungkook, who was having the same expression, and she smiled at him while her eyes started to water. She kicked. Jungkook nodded his head, confirming her thoughts, while his lips stretched into a big smile, showing his bunny teeth. She, YN nodded her head before placing her hand on his, which is still laying on her tummy. Mama instincts. YN laughed at his confused expression before hugging him tightly, despite her baby bump blocking them. Jungkook talked to his baby girl again, trying to feel her, and laughed his tears off when she kicked again. Jungkook looked outside the big window placed on the wall, looking at the falling night sky. There were small smudges of stars appearing. The night may linger long. What was about to come or not come? He waited while holding her in his arms.